Hi, boys and girls. Thank you for joining me today at Storytime Anytime. So today I'm going to be reading to you Jack and the Beanstalk. And this one was done by Mercer, and he has some funny books. There's Jack, and there's his cow. Once upon a time, there was a little critter named Jack. He lived with his mother, and they were very poor. All they had was a cow. One day, the cow stopped giving milk. "Take this cow to market and sell her," said Jack's mother. "Then we will have money to buy food." So Jack's taking his cow to sell her, and his mom says, "Hurry home." On his way into town, Jack met a sly old fox. The fox says, "I'll trade you what I have in this bag for your cow." Jack traded his cow for the bag of beans. He thanked the sly fox and ran home. Jack didn't know it, but these were magic beans. "How could you sell our cow for some worthless beans?" Jack's mother yelled. She threw the beans into the garden and sent Jack to bed. The next morning, Jack heard strange sounds outside his window. Let's look. What is that? What is that? During the night, a giant beanstalk had grown. Jack said goodbye to his mother and climbed the beanstalk. The giant beanstalk went straight up to the sky and right through the clouds. At the top was a castle where a mean giant lived. Jack walked to the castle and rang the bell. The giant's wife opened the door. "You look hungry," she said. "Do you want something to eat?" Suddenly, the front door burst open, and a giant voice filled the hall. "Fee-fi, apple fritter, I smell a little critter." The giant's wife told Jack to hide before the giant had him for dinner. Oh my goodness. And there's Jack, he's hiding in the cupboard. "I'm hungry," said the giant. He sat down and began to gobble up his dinner. Just then, some very strange sounds started coming from inside a sack on the table. "Lay hen," the giant roared. "Play harp." As the magic harp began to play a beautiful song, the magic hen began to lay golden eggs. Golden eggs? When the giant finally fell asleep, Jack crawled out of the cupboard. He picked up the harp, grabbed the hen, and ran as fast as he could. But the giant awoke. Oh, he wasn't happy. Oh my goodness. Jack quickly ran down the beanstalk. He grabbed an axe from the woodshed and chopped down the beanstalk. And the giant fell to the ground with a giant crash. Oh, there he is. Ah! Jack hugged his mother and gave her the magic harp and hen. "Lay hen," said Jack. "Play harp." And the harp began to play a beautiful song while the hen laid golden eggs. And let's see, there's the golden eggs. And with a golden egg, Jack bought back the cow, which made the cow very happy. The hole the giant made when he fell became a big wading pool. All the kids from the neighborhood came to play, and Jack was a hero. And they lived happily ever after. The end. Well, that was exciting. You never know what's going to happen in a book. Now, I've got a little flannel board that I think that you all would like. And this is it's called the Big, put that down there, the Big, Big Turnip. So, once upon a time, there was a farmer, and he planted a huge field of turnips. And he pulled them all up, except for there was one he could not pull up. He pulled, and he pulled, and he pulled, but he could not pull up that turnip. So he called his wife. He said, "Dear, could you please come help me?" And she said, "Yes, of course." So his wife held on to the farmer held on to the turnip, and together they pulled, and they pulled, but they could not pull up that turnip. So they called their daughter. "Alice, dear, could you please come help us?" And she was a very nice girl. She said, "Yes, of course, Mother." So Alice held on to her mother. The mother held on to the father. The father held on to the turnip, and they pulled, and they pulled, but they could not pull up that turnip. So Alice said, "Come here, doggy." And her dog came, and she said, "Could you please help us?" And the dog said, "Woof, woof," which means, "Of course I'll help you." So the dog held on to Alice. Alice held on to her mother. The mother held on to the father, and the father held on to the turnip, and together they all pulled. They pulled, and they pulled, but they could not pull up that turnip. So then the dog said to the cat, "Woof, woof," which means, "Would you please help us?" And the cat said, "Meow," which means, "Of course I'll help you." So the cat held on to the dog held on to the daughter held on to the mother held on to the father, and the father held on to the turnip, and together they all pulled and pulled and pulled, but they could not pull up that turnip. So then here comes this little mouse. His name is Squeakers. And he says, "Do you want me to pull up that turnip for you?" And they laughed. They said, "Oh, you're too small. You couldn't pull up that turnip." And he said, "Yeah, I could, but I'll just help you." So Squeakers held on to the cat. You stay there, Squeakers. The cat held on to the dog held on to Alice held on to her mother, the mother held on to the father, and the father held on to the turnip, and they pulled, and they pulled, and they pulled, and out of the ground came the turnip. And they were so happy. Everybody had roasted turnips for dinner that night. So even though the mouse was very small, the mouse was very important and was a big help. So that's our stories today. So thank you for joining me.